My name is Emma Chen. I'm 29 years old, and I'm standing in my parents' backyard watching my younger sister Sophia announce her engagement to 200 guests. Before we toast, Sophia's voice rang out crystal clear, her manicured hand gripping the microphone. I need to make something clear. Emma won't be at the wedding. Family only. My champagne glass trembled in my hand. The bubbles suddenly looked like tiny explosions. Every head in that garden turned to stare at me. The sister who'd raised her, who'd given up college to pay for hers, now branded as not family enough. My legs felt like water, but I forced myself to stay standing to keep that smile frozen on my face while inside, something ancient and primal began to crack. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been betrayed by family you sacrificed everything for, please like and share. Sometimes the universe has plans we never see coming. The crowd's silence was deafening. Mrs. Peterson from next door covered her mouth. My high school teacher, Mr. Davies, looked away. Then the whispers started spreading like wildfire through people I'd known my whole life. I could hear fragments. Her own sister, how cruel, poor Emma. But I kept that smile plastered on even as my insides turned to ice. What they didn't know, what even Sophia didn't know, was that our family lawyer, Mr. Harrison, was recording everything on his phone from the corner table. He'd been watching me all evening with those sharp gray eyes, waiting. We'd planned for this moment, though I never believed Sophia would actually do it. Not here, not like this. I set my glass down on the nearest table. My movements mechanical, practiced. 20 years of being the invisible sister had taught me to move through humiliation like walking through rain. You get wet, but you keep going. Mom was looking at me from across the garden, her expression unreadable. Dad had his arm around Sophia, beaming with pride at his golden child. To Sophia and Marcus, someone shouted, breaking the terrible silence. The crowd erupted in forced celebration, glasses raising, but I saw the sideways glances, the uncomfortable shifts. They all knew what they'd just witnessed. A public execution of sisterhood. Marcus, Sophia's fiancé, had the decency to look uncomfortable. His mother, Judge Patricia Whitmore, was studying me with an expression I couldn't read. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the folder hidden in my car. The documents that would change everything, and Mr. Harrison's steady presence in the corner, recording every second of my sister's cruelty. I stayed another hour, served cake with steady hands. Smiled at relatives who patted my shoulder with pity. Listened to Sophia laugh about wedding plans I wouldn't be part of. Each minute was agony, but I endured it. I'd endured worse. I'd endured 20 years of worse. For 2 decades I lived in Sophia's shadow without complaint. When Dad's business collapsed when I was 17, I withdrew my college applications without being asked. The acceptance letter from Stanford was still in my drawer, yellowed at the edges, a monument to what could have been. Emma's so responsible, everyone said, as I worked 3 jobs, the coffee shop at dawn, the bookstore in the afternoon, the cleaning service at night. Such a good sister, they praised as I handed over my paychecks every Friday, direct deposit into Dad's account. I kept $50 a week for myself, $50 to cover my bus pass, my thrift store clothes, my dollar store shampoo. Sophia needed things, you see, tuition for Berkeley, a car for campus, a white BMW that I'd never even sat in, her study abroad program in Paris that cost more than I made in a year, designer clothes for internship interviews. An apartment in San Francisco that sat empty half the time while she stayed with her boyfriend. Mom would pat my shoulder absently whenever I looked tired. You understand, don't you, Emma? Sophia has potential. She's special, special. That word followed my sister like expensive perfume. I was practical Emma, reliable Emma, the one who'd never amount to much anyway. The one who slept in the basement, not even a real bedroom, just a corner behind the water heater with a mattress on the floor. The one who wore the same 3 outfits in rotation while Sophia's closet burst with clothes that still had tags. You're not pretty like Sophia, Mom told me once, matter-of-factly while I helped her fold laundry. But you're useful, that's important too. Useful, like a good appliance. Something you don't think about until it breaks. But 3 months ago, everything changed. I was cleaning Dad's study, because of course I was. Even at 29, still cleaning their house every Sunday when I knocked over a box of old tax returns. Papers scattered everywhere. As I knelt to gather them, I saw it. A folder that had been hidden behind the others, labeled Chen Estate, Confidential. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents that would shatter the careful fiction my family had built. Documents that Sophia thought she'd destroyed years ago when she helped Dad organize his files. Documents that explained why she really didn't want me at that wedding. Why she needed me to remain the outsider, the servant, the one who wasn't really family. Because if I ever found out the truth, her entire life would unravel. Grandma Chen died when I was 7. I barely remembered her, just fragments of jasmine tea and soft hands that would stroke my hair while Sophia played with her dolls. She'd lived in San Francisco in a Victorian house that smelled like incense and old books. We'd visited her twice before she died. Both times, she'd held my face in her papery hands and said, "You have my spirit, little Emma. You have my spine." What I didn't know until 3 months ago was that she'd left everything to me. Not to her son, my father. Not to be split between grandchildren, to me alone. $5 million in that Victorian house in Pacific Heights. The will was specific, written in her shaky handwriting to my granddaughter Emma Chen, who carries my spirit and my strength. She will know what to do with this gift. The others have shown their nature, only Emma has shown her heart. But I'd never seen a penny, never even knew it existed. The documents in Dad's study revealed why. Forgery, fraud. A fake will submitted to probate court, claiming Grandma had left everything to Dad as the sole heir. The signature was close but not perfect. The witness signatures were more damning. One was Sophia's, dated just 2 weeks after her 18th birthday. The other was Mom's. They'd all been in on it. They'd split the money, bought the house we lived in, the one where I slept in the basement, funded Sophia's entire education with my money, built Dad's new import business with my inheritance. Every luxury they'd enjoyed, every opportunity Sophia had been given, every single thing that had been denied to me, it had all been paid for with money that was mine. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. My inheritance had paid for the very garden where my sister now publicly disowned me. The champagne they were drinking, the designer dress she wore, all of it stolen from the granddaughter who'd reminded Grandma of herself. But they'd made one mistake, one tiny fatal mistake that would cost them everything. They'd kept the original will. It was there in the folder, tucked behind the forgery like they'd forgotten about it. Or maybe Dad kept it as some kind of trophy. The real will, with Grandma's actual signature, with the correct witnesses, her nurse and her neighbor, both long dead now. But the document remained. Proof of what they'd done. I'd sat on Dad's study floor for an hour, reading and rereading, my mind struggling to process the magnitude of their betrayal. Then I'd taken photos of everything, uploaded them to 3 different cloud services, emailed them to myself, and then I'd carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. That night, I'd searched for Mr. Harrison online, Grandma's original lawyer, the one who'd drawn up the real will. Dad had told us he'd died in a car accident shortly after Grandma's death. Another lie. He was alive, still practicing in San Francisco, now senior partner at his firm. His photo showed a man in his 70s with sharp gray eyes and a face that had seen too much. I'd called his office the next morning from a payphone at the train station. His secretary put me through immediately when I said it was about the Chen estate. "Emma Chen?" His voice was cautious but alert. "I've been looking for you for 20 years. Mr. Harrison met me at a coffee shop in San Francisco that same week. I watched him go pale as he read through the documents I'd photographed. Then his pale turned to red. Then the red settled into something cold and dangerous. They told me you'd died," he said quietly. "Your father said you'd all died in a car accident except for him. That's why he inherited everything." He set down the papers with shaking hands. "I knew something was wrong. Your grandmother would never have changed her will, but without proof." "Now you have proof," I said. He studied me for a long moment. This man who'd known my grandmother, who'd helped her plan her final wishes, who'd been deceived just as I had. "Your family has committed multiple felonies. Fraud, forgery, theft, conspiracy. We're talking about serious prison time. You could have them all arrested tomorrow." "I don't want them arrested," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I want something better. Which is, I want them to feel what I've felt all these years. To stand in a room full of people and realize everyone knows exactly who they really are. I want them to lose everything the way they made me lose everything, but mostly," I paused, thinking of Sophia's casual cruelty, of 20 years of being told I wasn't enough. "I want them to know that I won. That the useful one, the ugly one, the one who would never amount to anything, I want them to know that I was the one Grandma chose. And I was the one who brought them down. Mr. Harrison smiled then, a sharp expression that reminded me of a blade being drawn. Your grandmother would have liked that. She had a saying, revenge is a dish best served at a temperature that burns going down. We spent the next 6 weeks planning. Mr. Harrison's investigator dug up everything: bank records showing where the money went, property transfers, business documents. The paper trail was extensive and damning. They'd been sloppy, confident that I'd never find out, that I'd always be the obedient daughter working herself to death for scraps of approval. The FBI became interested when we discovered Dad's business had other questionable dealings: money laundering, tax evasion, bribes to port officials. My family hadn't just stolen from me, they'd built an empire of crimes, each one documented, each one traceable. We could move now, Mr. Harrison said a week before Sophia's engagement party, but you wanted them exposed, not just arrested. Can you come to the party? I asked. As my guest? He understood immediately. I'll bring my phone. Record everything. You never know what might be useful in court. So when Sophia announced her engagement party, I knew we'd found our moment. The stage where their performance would finally end. The morning after the party, I woke to the sound of Sophia screaming into her phone upstairs. The wedding venue, the St. Regis, paid for with my stolen inheritance, had cancelled. Payment issues, they told her. Though the real reason was that Mr. Harrison had informed them they were potentially receiving stolen funds. The caterer called next. Then the florist. Then the photographer. One by one, every vendor connected to the wedding backed out within hours. Mr. Harrison's firm had sent them all the same letter: cease and desist, potential criminal investigation, frozen assets. Dad's phone started ringing too. His business partners, his investors, his clients. Seemed someone had anonymously sent them documentation about his financial fraud. The FBI would be visiting his office on Monday. They didn't know that yet. I was folding laundry in my basement corner, humming softly, when Sophia stormed down the stairs. Her face was twisted with rage, mascara streaking down her cheeks from crying. She looked like the mask had finally cracked. Emma, she grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. What did you do? I don't know what you mean, I replied, continuing to fold my worn towels with steady hands. 20 years of practice had taught me to hide everything behind calm movements, to be the servant who never looked up. I thought I wasn't family. Why would I be involved in your wedding? Don't play dumb with me. Her grip tightened. The same hands that had signed the fraudulent will when she was 18, that had taken everything from me with a pen stroke. The venue called. They said something about an investigation. Dad's freaking out. His accounts are frozen. That sounds serious, I said mildly, pulling my arm free. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer. She slapped me. Hard. The sound echoed in the basement like a gunshot. My cheek burned, but I didn't react. I'd been hit before, when I was 15 and accidentally broke one of Sophia's trophies, when I was 19 and forgot to pick up her dry cleaning, when I was 23 and dared to ask if I could keep a little more of my paycheck. You're going to fix this, she hissed. Call whoever you called, make it stop. I looked at her then. Really looked at her. The sister I'd raised when Mom was too busy with her book club and wine. The sister I'd walked to school every morning, packed lunches for, helped with homework until midnight, even though I had to be at work at 5 a.m. The sister who'd stolen my future and smiled while doing it. No, I said simply. The word hung between us like a blade. 29 years old, and it was the first time I'd ever said no to her. What did you say? I said no, Sophia. No, the word you've never heard from me before. For the first time in my life, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Real fear. The kind that comes when you realize the servant might have been the queen all along. You can't do this, she whispered. You're nobody. You're nothing. You're just the heir to Grandma Chen's estate. I finished calmly. The one whose inheritance you stole. The one whose money paid for your entire life. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. You don't know what you're talking about. $5 million, I said, still folding laundry, plus the house in Pacific Heights, left to me, not Dad. But you knew that, didn't you? When you signed that fake will, when you were 18 and decided that I didn't deserve what Grandma left me. She backed away, stumbling on the stairs. Dad said, he said you wouldn't need it. That you weren't going anywhere anyway, that I had potential. And I had inheritance. I cut her off. Which you stole. All of you. Mom, Dad, and you. One big happy family of thieves. She ran then, stumbling up the stairs, leaving me alone in my basement corner with my laundry and my truth finally spoken aloud. Dad called a family meeting that Sunday, the dining room table where I'd served countless meals, cooking for hours after my shifts, making sure everyone had their favorites while I ate leftovers standing at the counter, now became my courtroom. Mom sat rigid at her usual place, her wine glass already half empty at 10 in the morning. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. Sophia had been crying for 3 days straight, her eyes were swollen into slits. Someone's sabotaging us, Dad announced without preamble. Someone who knows things, private things, family things. His eyes fixed on me like lasers. 20 years of being invisible, of being furniture in my own home, and suddenly I was all he could see. Emma, you've been acting strange lately. Have I? I pulled out my phone, set it on the table between us. The same table where they'd planned my grandmother's financial murder. Strange like forging a will. Strange like stealing $5 million from your own daughter. The room went arctic. Mom's wine glass slipped, spilling Merlot across her white tablecloth, the one I'd have to clean later. Or maybe not. Maybe I was done cleaning up their messes. Strange like making that daughter work herself to death for 20 years to support the family while you lived off her inheritance. You don't know what you're talking about, Sophia whispered, but her voice was shaking now. The golden child's crown was slipping, and we all could hear it. Don't I? I smiled. It felt foreign on my face, like wearing someone else's expression. Mr. Harrison says otherwise. You remember Mr. Harrison, don't you, Dad? Grandma Chen's lawyer? The one you told died in a car accident? Dad's face went from red to gray in seconds. How did you find out? The same way you've always underestimated me. I was cleaning like the good servant I've always been, and I found your trophy folder, the one with the real will, the one you kept like some sick souvenir. Emma, sweetheart, Mom started, using the voice she used when she wanted me to work an extra shift so she could go to the spa. There's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I interrupted, was mine. For thinking you were my family. For thinking that if I just worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, loved enough, that someday you'd see me as more than useful. You're being dramatic, Dad said, but his voice had lost its authority. We're family. We can work this out. Family, I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my ears. Sophia made it very clear at her engagement party. I'm not family, just the fool who paid for everything. That's not what I meant, Sophia said quickly. I was just, the wedding is small. 200 people is small. You wouldn't fit in, she said desperately. Those people, they're different, they're sophisticated. You're the one who owns everything you thought was yours, I suggested. Silence fell like a hammer. You're recording this, Mom said suddenly, staring at my phone. Always the smartest one in the room, just too blinded by her preference for Sophia to use it fairly. You're trying to trap us. No, I said, standing up. I'm giving you a choice. Sign everything over to me, every penny stolen, every asset bought with my money, or I go public. The engagement party recording is already saved in 3 places. The one where Sophia admits I'm not family, where she publicly humiliates the sister who raised her. Imagine how that'll play when the fraud story breaks. You wouldn't, Dad said, but his voice was weak. The FBI will be at your office tomorrow, I informed him. They're very interested in your business practices. Turns out stealing from me was just the beginning of your crimes. Sophia lunged for my phone, but I was faster. Years of being the servant, of anticipating their needs before they knew them themselves, had taught me to read every movement. The wedding can continue, I said evenly, backing toward the door. If you sign, Mr. Harrison has the papers ready. Transfer everything to me, and maybe, I'll ask the FBI to go easy on you. You can't do this, Dad said, standing up, trying to summon the authority he'd held over me for so long. I'm your father. Are you? I asked. Because fathers don't steal from their children. Fathers don't make one daughter a slave to fund the other's dreams. Fathers don't lie about their mother's will and pocket millions while their eldest works 3 jobs. We gave you a home, Mom said weakly. A basement corner, while Sophia had a suite, paid for with my money. We fed you leftovers, while I cooked gourmet meals for you, after working 16-hour days. You're ungrateful, Sophia spat. After everything we've done. Everything you've done. I laughed again. You mean everything you've stolen? I reached the door, paused. You have 24 hours to decide. Sign, or everyone will know who you really are. The FBI, the IRS, the entire San Francisco society you're so desperate to impress. Everyone. Emma, please, Mom said, and for the first time in my life I heard her beg. Think about the family reputation. I said. I'm thinking about how it's built on lies and theft. 24 hours. Mr. Harrison will be waiting. They didn't sign. Of course they didn't. Pride was always their weakness. They thought I was bluffing. They thought useful plain worthless Emma wouldn't follow through. They thought wrong. So at Sophia's wedding rehearsal dinner, a lavish affair at the Fairmont Hotel, paid for by her future in-laws who didn't yet know what they were marrying into, Mr. Harrison stood up during the toasts. The ballroom was perfect. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, 200 of San Francisco's elite in their finest clothes. Sophia wore a $10,000 dress. Marcus stood beside her, handsome and clueless. His mother, Judge Patricia Whitmore, sat at the head table, regal in her authority. I have an announcement, Mr. Harrison said, his voice carrying across the elegant space with 40 years of courtroom practice. I represent the estate of Mrs. Mei Chen, and I'm here to correct a 20-year injustice. The room stirred. Sophia's face went white. Dad started to stand, but Mr. Harrison's assistant was already at the projection screen. Emma Chen, he continued, gesturing to where I stood by the exit in my simple black dress, the nicest thing I owned, bought at a consignment shop, is the rightful heir to the Chen fortune. Everything her family has, this very celebration was stolen from her through fraud and forgery. The first slide appeared. Grandma's real will, then the forgery, then the bank records, then the paper trail of 20 years of theft. The room erupted. Sophia's scream cut through the chaos like a knife. Dad lunged for the microphone, but security hired by Mr. Harrison for this moment stopped him. Mom sat frozen, her face a mask of shock. But the best part wasn't the chaos. It wasn't even the exposure. It was Judge Whitmore standing up slowly, her face carved from ice, walking over to her son. Is this true? She asked Marcus. Did you know about this? I know, Mother. I didn't. She turned to Sophia. You stole from your own sister, the one you told us was mentally unstable, the one you said couldn't come to the wedding because she was jealous and dangerous. More lies. I hadn't known about those lies. And you, Judge Whitmore turned to my parents, committed fraud, forgery, theft. In my 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such cruelty within a family. Patricia, please. Mom started, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You stole millions from one daughter to give to another. You made her a servant in her own home, and then you had the audacity to lie about her character to cover your crimes. The judge walked over to me. Miss Chen, I apologize for my family's involvement with these people. Rest assured, there will be no wedding. Thank you, I said quietly. Mom finally broke free from her frozen state, stumbling across the ballroom to where I stood. Emma, she said, tears streaming down her face. My God, Emma, what have we done to you? What you thought you had to, I replied, my voice steady. To protect the special one. We were wrong. We were so wrong. Please, Emma, please. It's too late for please, I said, 20 years too late. Then I walked out, leaving them to face the storm they'd created. The last thing I heard was Sophia sobbing. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. But it was. Finally it was. The legal proceedings took 6 months. Criminal charges were filed. Dad's business was investigated and shut down. The FBI found more than just my stolen inheritance. They found years of money laundering, tax evasion, bribery. He was looking at 10 years minimum. Sophia's wedding was called off the night of the rehearsal dinner. Marcus's family wanted nothing to do with the scandal. The society pages had a field day. Heiress exposed as fraud. The sister in the basement. San Francisco's cruelest family secret. The house was transferred to my name by court order. The remaining money, what was left after they'd spent almost $3 million, was returned to me. Dad's business assets were liquidated. Mom's jewelry, Sophia's cars, everything bought with my money was seized. I sold the house immediately. I couldn't live in a place built on my stolen dreams where my basement corner still smelled like mildew and lost years. But Grandma's house in Pacific Heights, the one they'd sold without my knowledge, that I fought to get back. The elderly couple who'd bought it were kind when they heard the story. They sold it back to me for what they'd paid, not what it was worth now. Everyone deserves to go home, Mrs. Yamamoto said, handing me the keys. Standing in Grandma's house for the first time in 22 years, I cried. It still smelled like jasmine tea and old books. Her portrait still hung in the living room. She looked like me, I realized. Or I looked like her. The same stubborn chin, the same steady eyes. Sophia tried to contact me once, leaving a voicemail on my new phone. I'm sorry, Emma. I was young. Dad said it was for the best, that you were stronger than me, that you didn't need it like I did. Please, I need help. I have nothing. I'm working it. Please call me back. I deleted it. Some apologies come too late. Some bridges once burned illuminate the path forward instead of the way back. Mom sends letters. I don't open. They pile up in a box in the closet. Maybe someday I'll read them. Maybe I won't. The return address is a small apartment in Daly City. Dad's in federal prison. He got 8 years. The letters from him I throw away unopened. He doesn't deserve even that much of my attention. Sophia works at Being There, the same coffee shop where I used to work 16-hour shifts to pay for her spring break trips. My old manager told me she's a terrible employee, always late, always complaining, can't handle the early mornings or the rude customers. She lives in a studio apartment in the Tenderloin, the only place she could afford. The girl who once spent $500 on a purse now counts quarters for bus fare. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on them, not because I care, but because I need to know they're staying away. The restraining order helps, but vigilance is better. I'm 30 now. I run a foundation with what's left of my inheritance, about $2 million after the legal fees and buying back Grandma's house. The Chen Foundation for Financial Abuse Survivors. We help women who've been economically exploited by their families. Women who were told they were less than, who were made to sacrifice everything for someone else's dreams. The foundation has helped 43 women so far. Each one reminds me of myself, the servant daughter, the scapegoat, the one who was useful but never valued. We provide legal aid, temporary housing, job training. We help them reclaim what was stolen, or start fresh when there's nothing left to reclaim. Mr. Harrison is on my board of directors. At our last meeting he told me something that made me cry again, the good kind of tears this time. You know, he said, looking at Grandma's portrait in my office, your grandmother came to me a week before she died. She said, make sure Emma gets everything. The others will try to take it, but Emma has my spine. She'll know what to do when the time comes. She knew. She suspected. Your father had been asking about her will, pushing her to change it. She saw his nature, and she saw yours. I think about that sometimes. About the grandmother I barely knew but who saw me clearly, who tried to protect me from beyond the grave, whose justice just took 20 years to arrive. Last week I saw Sophia at Whole Foods. I was buying flowers for Grandma's grave. She was at the checkout, counting coins for a single box of pasta. She saw me and froze. I was wearing a suit. I'd just come from a board meeting, my own board meeting, for my own foundation, built with my own inheritance. She looked older, tired. The golden girl tarnish had worn off, leaving someone ordinary and defeated. Her clothes were from Walmart, her roots were showing. Her hands shook as she dropped quarters. Emma, she started, her voice small. I looked at her, really looked at her. This stranger who shared my blood but had never shared my struggles, who took everything and still wanted more, who even now, broken and poor, probably thought she was the victim. I walked past, not with cruelty, not with anger, with the simple indifference you'd show a stranger in a store, because that's what she'd made us. Strangers, and strangers don't owe each other anything. The cashier was young, maybe 19. She watched Sophia count coins with barely hidden impatience. I recognized that look. I'd been on both sides of it. The exhausted service worker and the customer who can't afford their groceries. I could have helped. Old Emma would have helped. Would have paid for the pasta and probably bought her a week's worth of groceries. would have given her another chance, another dollar, another piece of myself. But I'm not old Emma anymore. I'm the Emma who Grandma saw, the one with the spine. I paid for my flowers and left. The last thing I heard was the cashier saying, "Ma'am, you're still short 47 cents. The flowers looked beautiful on Grandma's grave. White jasmine, her favorite. I sat on the grass and told her everything about the trial. The foundation. The house that still smells like her. The justice that finally came. You were right about me," I said to the headstone. "I did know what to do. It just took me a while to find the spine you saw." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of jasmine. It felt like an answer, like approval, like the grandmother I barely knew saying, "I always knew you would." "Mr. Harrison called yesterday. There's been a development. Dad's trying to appeal his sentence, claiming I manipulated him into keeping the original will, that I planted it, that I'm the real criminal." "He has no case," Mr. Harrison assured me. "The forensics prove the documents are 20 years old. His fingerprints are all over them. Sophia's signature is authenticated. He's desperate." "Let him try," I said. "I'm not afraid anymore." And I'm not. For 20 years I lived in fear. Fear of disappointing them. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being cast out. But they cast me out anyway in front of 200 people, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because sometimes you have to lose everything to realize you already had nothing, and sometimes the family that betrays you gives you the gift of freedom. I run Grandma's house as a halfway home now. Women from the foundation can stay there while they get back on their feet. The basement, properly renovated, warm and bright, houses a woman named Maria who escaped her family with nothing but her children. She reminds me of myself at 20, exhausted and hopeless. "How did you do it?" she asked me last week. "How did you survive?" I didn't. I told her honestly. The old me died in that garden in front of all those people. But someone new was born, someone with a spine. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe all of us who've been broken by the people who should have loved us understand that sometimes breaking is just the beginning of becoming. The foundation is expanding. We're opening a second location in Los Angeles. I've been invited to speak at conferences about financial abuse. My story, the one they tried to bury in a basement corner, is helping other women find their voices. Sometimes I dream about that engagement party, about Sophia's announcement, about the champagne glass trembling in my hand. But in the dreams I don't smile. I don't stay silent. I walk up to that microphone and tell everyone the truth right then and there. But I'm glad I didn't. The real revenge was so much better, the slow unraveling, the public exposure, the complete destruction of their carefully built facade. They wanted me to explode, to make a scene, to be the crazy sister Sophia told everyone I was. Instead, I was patient, calculated. I gave them every chance to make it right, and when they didn't, I made sure their fall was complete and public and permanent. There's a poetic justice in Sophia working at my old job, in Dad sitting in a cell, in Mom alone in her apartment with only her wine and her regrets. They're living the life they planned for me, poor, struggling, forgotten. And I'm living the life they stole, comfortable, respected, free. Last month, a reporter wanted to do a story about us. The sister in the basement. A year later, I declined. My story isn't about them anymore. It's about the foundation, the women we help, the grandmother who saw me clearly when no one else did. But mostly, it's about the moment you stop being useful and start being powerful. The moment you stop accepting crumbs and demand the whole feast. The moment you realize that family isn't about blood. It's about honor, loyalty, truth. They taught me that family was sacrifice. But they never said whose sacrifice it should be. For 20 years it was mine. Every paycheck, every dream, every moment of my youth. I sacrificed it all for people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. But sacrifice without reciprocation isn't family. It's servitude, and servants eventually revolt. I kept one thing from the old house. A photo from Sophia's 16th birthday. I'm in the background, barely visible, carrying the cake I'd baked after my night shift. Sophia is in the center, glowing, surrounded by friends. Mom and Dad flank her like guards of honor. I keep it on my desk at the foundation. When women come in, broken and exploited by their families, I show them that photo. That was me, I tell them, invisible, useful, forgotten. Then I show them a photo from last week. Me at the foundation gala surrounded by the women we've helped, standing in front of Grandma's portrait. This is also me, I say, visible, powerful, free. They always ask the same question, how? And I always give the same answer, I stopped being useful and started being truthful. The truth was my inheritance. Not just the money though that helped, but the truth that I deserved better, that I was worth more than my utility, that being family doesn't mean being a servant. Grandma knew that. She saw it in me when I was 7 years old, too young to understand. She left me more than money, she left me permission to be more than useful, to be valued, to be seen. It just took me 20 years and a public humiliation to claim it. If you've made it this far, you understand that family isn't about blood, it's about honor, it's about loyalty, it's about truth. If this story touched you, if you've ever had to rebuild your life from betrayal, please share it, like it. Comment your own story, because somewhere, someone needs to know they're not alone. That justice, though it may take decades, has a way of finding its path, and that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's simply claiming what was always yours and building something beautiful from the ashes of what they destroyed. Your story matters, your pain is valid, and your triumph when it comes will be sweeter because of everything you survived.